Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. I want to take a look at Bitcoin here after the fall that we saw here going into Sunday at the close of the week. Where do we go from here? I'm looking at more downside action, potentially some rotation into the small cap names, which we're already seeing a little bit of, but it's mostly been quick pumps, quick trades at this point. I'm not really looking at any swing trades holding for a few days or a week or so. Just in light of the weakness overall that's starting to show up here. The sellers are now in control. Buyers were in control for quite some time, and then we saw that last push higher over the weekend before the pullback. So I'm going to go into the details there, what I'm thinking going forward here over the next couple of days. And before we do that, I want to quickly remind everybody there is 2 days left here on the sale that I'm running on the new 4-step cryptocurrency trading course. So if you go to nodeinvestor.com/training, you can buy either part of these or the entire set. And if you enter promo code 4step or insider, either one of them will work now, you will get a 30% discount on your purchase. And for those of you that buy the bundle, meaning all 4 of these, there's a bundle setup, you also get an invite to the Node Insiders Slack group, as well as an additional discount for buying the bundle. So go check that out, and as well you can also have access to these videos at nodeinsiders.com. That's our alert system where we also do private streams and some of this other stuff here, and so those videos are accessible for those of you that are already members. Go to the training courses under the resources tab and you will have access to those here. On this webinars, I went into a deep dive yesterday, Monday morning, check-in with the Node Insiders, and we talked a little bit about what I'm going to cover here today, and so far it looks to be playing out. Some of the names that we did look at have broken out, so go check that out if you have access to that Monday morning update. So looking at the charts here, first things first, there was a lot of narratives around, oh, this market's manipulated, or what timing, and finance technical issues, and BitMEX, and just different things. There was news, potential rumors out of China or Korea, and let's be real, I mean, some of this was overdue, right? I was personally waiting for this type of big red candle back in here in this time frame, and then we never got it. Of course, we got that last breakout, that one push higher, and the trades that I did take in this little window here were relatively short trades, meaning a few hours to about a day at most, mostly because I was starting to see divergences. I was starting to get very cautious, and you can see here on the 4-hour chart, we had that push higher, that higher high. This was the third leg up. We had that first leg up here, second leg, nice consolidation, third leg higher. And in this last one, of course, there was the bearish divergence that was starting to show up in both the RSI and the MACD. And of course, with these divergences, they're never confirmed until after the fact, because if prices just keep running, then sure enough, the RSI and the MACD could continue higher and it would negate that. But when you begin to see them, prices start to lose some momentum to the upside, I begin to get very cautious. It's a big red flag for me. And so I really just started to scale out of most of my trades at that point, kept very tight stops. And in this case, my stops were not into BTC, but rather they were back into dollar equivalents or cash, however you want to look at it, just because I was expecting a little bit more of a dramatic fall. Now we saw that, and it happened to land right around that $3,700 mark here on the USD pricing. So far, that's where support has shown up, but now we're seeing a little bit of a bear flag type of bounce. The bounce has been a little weak here. I did buy back in on this dip on Sunday morning when I saw prices finally drop below. I bought the blood, if you will, and I was expecting a bounce, but I was expecting a little bit stronger of a bounce. I was thinking maybe we'd see 3,900, potentially close to 4K before rolling over again. And then yesterday we started to hit this moving average confluence there on the 1-hour chart. The RSI hit 60. It's a level that I do watch. Let's hop over there real quick. And so I posted in the group yesterday that I was starting to scale out here, and sure enough, we started to see the rollover. It wasn't quite the big dump that I was looking for, but so far prices are continuing to push lower. Let me move that here for us. And so we're still kind of just grinding lower. And so what I'm looking for now is a retest of this low that we saw on my Sunday morning here around that 3,700, and if it quickly drops to that point, then most likely we'll undercut that and make a new relative low. At that point, it's anyone's guess how low that goes, but one thing I'm reminding myself and keeping others in mind of is when you see a drop like this huge drop, I mean, that pretty much was the end of this run that we saw here, right? This multi-leg run that started in early February, and that was the end. I mean, the buyers were really in control for most of this. We saw some very strong moves in many of the altcoins, mostly in the big cap names. And after this big reversal, with that last hoorah, if you will, the big breakouts followed by a dramatic fall very quick. And that to me signified that's the end of the run. At this point, I'm looking for either some consolidation or some more downside action. These moves, when you see them so dramatically on this daily chart, very rarely do they just resolve themselves in one day and just drop all the way down and then start heading back up again. It's pretty rare to see that. At best, we need to kind of just hold tight here for a little bit, get some support built, and then maybe start grinding our way back up, perhaps making a lower high, consolidating at that level. But it's pretty rare to just see them drop and then just go straight back up. More often than not, you're going to see a drop, a little bit of a bounce, and then another leg lower. And then that's going to be the big question, right? How low do we go? And so the levels I'm watching right now is if it breaks below 3,700, then I'm going to be watching this 3,600 to 3,560 level, which was this most recent support here, this consolidation. Below that, of course, the key level is the low that we saw in February around 3,350. That's an important low because if you go to the weekly chart, we can see that on the weekly, we rejected right at that 10 EMA. I was talking about this on Friday for those of you that caught the live stream, and we had that push higher. I thought most likely we'll be closing above the 10 EMA this week. It'll be the first time that happens since August of 2018. And right at the end of the week, just really rejected, pulled right back in. So now this weekly candle has a big wick. But this low here that we saw a couple weeks back was a higher weekly low within this broader bear pennant that is potentially forming here. And so that's an important low to be watching. If it breaks below that weekly low, that's going to be a false higher low. And at that point, I don't see that low around 3,100 holding up very well. So we could, in that scenario, see a break below that and make a new relative low for this bear market. So that's a scenario that I'm keeping an eye on. Of course, we have several levels of support that have to be broken before that starts to be a factor, but something that I am keeping in the back of my mind if this was the near-term top for now. Otherwise, look for some more consolidation here in this range, let a little bit of a base build out, and then potentially run higher. Now, this is a little bit of a different rally than we saw last year, but going back to the daily chart, what I want to point out is we had this run, and it was about 24%, I believe, off the lows. Yeah, from the lows to the top, it was about 24.5% before we saw the big drop lower. And notice where this has landed so far. It's right at these moving average pairs, right at the 50 EMA on the daily, right at the 22 EMA on the daily, which I track. And you can see that has been support here in recent past, and it's also generally resistance on the way down. And we had a similar drop like this early last year after a low in April that led to a pretty decent run up. And notice we had another similar run where you had, the first leg higher, consolidation, another leg higher, consolidation, that last big push, and then the drop that was pretty big. And I remember trading this last year and I was thinking, there it is. I was waiting for this big red candle up here around these levels. We finally got it. And at that time I thought that's probably the end of the move, and it turned out to not be. What ended up happening was it just kind of grinded its way higher very slowly and then made a new relative high. There was some divergences at that point, and then it finally rolled over and had a deeper pullback. And during this last week and a half of just kind of bouncing higher slowly, there was many alt trades to be had. There was a lot of good bounces, especially we started to see some rotation into some of the smaller mid-cap names. And so I'm keeping this in mind too as a potential. Now, granted, this was coming off of a little bit stronger market. Right now we're in a much weaker market overall in the macro levels, so we got to keep that in mind. But you did see a big rejection here and then a bounce. Now this one did land right at the 10 EMA and never came close to these lower moving averages, and that's not the case in this scenario. So just something I'm watching, but I'm always looking at both angles. Which way could this play out? How could it play out? And setting if-then plans for each potential scenario. But right now, if I had to guess, I'm looking at another potential drop, and I'm thinking we'll at least retest these lows around 3,700, if not undercut them slightly, and then maybe look at the 3600s down to potentially high 3,500s and making a new low and then a higher low. So that's what I'm looking at, a couple different scenarios. There have been a few alts moving here. Most of the big cap names are just really tracking to Bitcoin. So if it's rallying, they're pushing higher. If it's dropping, they're dropping, of course, along with it. There was a couple of names that mostly news driven, of course. We saw Ripple yesterday having a big push off of the Coinbase news, but not as strong as most people would have anticipated. I mean, it was a quick run, but it was only about a 9-10% rally before pulling back. Still consolidating here a little bit on the 1 hour chart. Maybe gives another leg higher if it can break that downtrend. But for now, it's a news-driven event. It's kind of fizzling out. Very typical of that type of action. Another one today was Mana, Decentraland. Very strong move off of partnership announcements with HTC. And we're seeing a few like phone-related moves. We saw Mana. We saw Engine yesterday with Samsung pushing prices higher very quickly. Basic attention token. And so there's been some quick pumps in this smaller mid-cap range here over the last couple of days, and they've been decent. I mean, if you look at the size of these moves, that was a 49% move before the quick pullback. But you got to be quick on these because they're very short-lived. A lot of profit taking shows up, but if you're just happen to be watching, you can jump on some of these. It makes for some very nice move. Unfortunately, I missed all of those. I did take a nice quick scalp on Ripple yesterday, but it certainly was no 49% trade to the upside. Icon was another one. I've been talking about this one here. Did finally break out of this range, pulled back in yesterday with the action in the broader crypto space, but then today also rallied with some more news, ICO related stuff, but it did hit that target I was looking for. I was looking for 730 to about 740, and this one peaked just above 760. It is pulling back now. We'll see if it gives another leg, but for now, that was the target I was looking for on this Icon BTC trade. You can see this is a big resistance level. Now, above this level, if it starts to set up around here and hold this level, then that may make for another trade on the upside. But for now, that's really what I was looking for. A lot of volume came in here on this last push higher. All around, it's just going to really come down to what the market does here in the coming days. And I'm a lot more cautious. So for now, I'm just going to be watching this rising trend line, a little bit of a bear flag type of action showing up here on the BTC chart. And notice that it is also living below this 10 EMA now. The 10 EMA is below the 22, below the 50. And so right now, things are leaning in favor of the sellers. And so that's the dominant trend for me right now. I'm going to just kind of take that as the general approach. And until that changes, then I may begin looking at some more long side action. So for now, I'm going to just be patient, let this thing play out, let it settle out. First resistance on the way up, it's going to be around 3,900 if it can even get that high. And then above that, psychological 4K is going to be the next big zone to be watching. So that's going to be it for today, guys. I will keep you guys posted as this develops. Thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.